All right, good evening. I'm going to call the Capital Improvement and Planning Committee meeting to order. It is March 20th, 2024, and it is 7:32 p.m. I don't expect Tony tonight, so we'll have 4 out of our 5 voting members here tonight. First item on the agenda are 3 sets of minutes for approval. The first being December 26th. Any comments or questions on those?
Those are the ones that Steve did. I just want to confirm. There's a lot of
Yes.
things going on.
Yes. All right. Any on January 3rd, which I believe were Tony's?
I believe I had a couple, but there were more questions, or some more questions. I thought that when he mentioned equipment purchased or that we voted on, I think he said a tractor. He said a sidewalk tractor mower attachment, and I thought we voted on the sidewalk tractor itself. So I don't know. That was my recollection was we voted on the tractor, not just the sidewalk tractor mower. I don't know what the rest of you remember.
Well, those 2 items are both going to town meeting this year. So, but
Right. Yep.
without going back and watching the recording,
Yep.
I don't remember because because of the volume of DPW, we did have to split it over multiple meetings. So, and we may have taken motions. So on that, on that one, I would recommend that, once we get to any other comments on that one, that we approve them subject to someone going back and confirming the exact motion that was in the video.
Sure. I like I said, that's just what I remembered. So I thought I'd ask all of you what you remembered. And I think this probably needs the documents. I'm sure there were some attachments, documents, so we could
Agreed.
have those added. And I didn't know if we were considering some of the other, there were some other things that normally, I mean, when I took Jeff's original template, there were, whether we wanted to record starting time and ending time, and certainly other people that appeared in the meeting at the start. Not that they're all necessary, but those, put it this way.
Well, start and end time. In my opinion, start and end time are required. So yes, we need to probably go back and figure that out. And I think we do a pretty good job of denoting. I usually say the time in the video because no one's going to remember unless they write it down. And then the video recording, you just add to that time to get to your end time. So yes, good comments on those. And yes, we need to add the documents, which we can just pull from the folder that was there for the meeting.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and put it this way, I don't care, but I got it when I took Jeff's template originally.
Oh boy.
I started copying the master over there.
The bar is high, Joe.
We set the bar pretty high at the beginning.
Oh boy. Hey, Jason, one other question on these. Is it required to say who motioned, who seconded? Is that a requirement?
Yeah. I think we need to have someone take. I don't think we can vote on these ones, to be completely honest. Just even though they're all factual changes, I think let's just get it right. So my thought would be we table these, but we have a lot of comments, and I don't know, Jeff, I'll coordinate with you offline of how we, as the clerk, just how we capture that. And the good news is I don't know it's going to take that long to fix, but let's just get them right, given the amount of motions we took that meeting. Did you have anything else for those ones, Joe?
No.
Did anyone else have anything that Joe didn't mention already? All right. Now I'm sure perfection ensues on 212 with Jeff's. So any comments on Jeff's?
I had just a couple things. I was wondering under review and approve the ARPA recommendations, if in the second paragraph, we could just eliminate the first and the last sentence and just move the Mr. Malinowski would like up to the other paragraph above it. If anybody had a problem with doing that.
Keep it a separate paragraph or move it up? Sorry.
No, just eliminate the committee as opposed to
Yeah.
at the start, eliminate that sentence and eliminate the one at the bottom that says about the construction money and just move the middle sentence up to the paragraph above it. Just because I think it reads better and I'm not sure either of those are both definitive sentences that I thought would
Then-
read just as well without it. And the other thing I wanted to apologize if when in here, when it says that Mr. Palmer indicated that the point came up on the ARPA committee, that the committee was not in favor of stabilization funds. If I gave that impression in that meeting, that was actually not correct. What was told to the ARPA committee was that the consultant said that we couldn't use ARPA funds for stabilization. And like Jason, I said, well, if we just offset things,
Okay.
as Jason sort of indicated by the sentence that you wrote above it, I said the same sort of thing, and the consultant sort of balked at that. And it's not that I disapprove of it because I like Jason's idea because that was sort of the same thing I was thinking. I don't know if the consultant indicated that that might be a problem if there was a direct offset. So, although I don't mind trying that, I would say that the ARPA committee was advised by the consultant that trading off, putting ARPA money into capital and then using that as freeing up budget for stabilization funds might be problematic in the future. We might get called on it.
And I don't think that's where we ended up. So and I agree with you, Joe. That's a fact. Like you couldn't
Yeah.
just take your
Yeah.
ARPA and put it into stabilization. Like that was, so my suggestion would be that, we just change it to say, Mr. Palmer reminded the committee of the advice, that they received in the ARPA committee that, ARPA funds couldn't go directly to stabilization. And leave it at that.
Mr. Palmer indicated the point came up on the ARPA committee, but the advice.
I mean, I think Jason's idea in the sense that if we put the money into capital items and there's some left over for stabilization, we might get
That-
off.
I mean-
that way. But anything that looks like it's a direct offset will be the problem.
Yeah, in my view was more just, when I made that statement, the goal of that statement was, sidewalks are still a priority, right? And they
Yes.
should continue to be part of the capital plan, because I didn't want people to think that we were going against the recommendation of the ARPA committee, which is no one was. It was more the timing to execute to make sure we actually get to utilize the money was the concern. So we just wanted to make sure that people don't forget about the sidewalk money a year from now, right? So if there were things that we could pull forward, then let's do so. But obviously, I think we're all saying the same thing at this point. So
Yes. Yeah, as I think as you're putting it, it's more the verbiage than the actual intent.
exactly.
So to offset future money for capital expenditure might be a friendly way to put it.
Okay.
So just to make sure I get this right. I would indicate, Mr. Palmer indicated that this point came up on the ARPA committee, but advice given by the ARPA committee's third-party consultant suggested that putting money into setting aside, or maybe
ARPA money may not be put towards stabilization funds
Directly.
directly.
okay.
All right. Any others on those ones? All right. Then I will move that we approve the meeting minutes from December 26th and February 12th. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So it's a 4-0 vote. Okay, next up is chair and member update. So Near Eaton Building Committee continues to move at a very rapid pace. The next open forum will be on April 11th. We've also started to conduct a survey related to grade configuration, purposely vague because we don't have facts behind it, but we're trying to gauge the temperature of the community and gather ideas to start to inform decisions. Of course, naturally, some people's mind gravitate towards cost at this point, which is we're nowhere close on that. The goal is to try to understand the vision of the community and then try to incorporate as much as that vision into ideally wherever we land in obviously a financially responsible way. So that next open forum on April 11th, my understanding is that there's actually gonna be some substance of where we're starting to trend with some of the scenarios. Again, not cost figures, but allowing the community to start to react to things put in front of them as opposed to I'll call it more visionary pie in the sky type thinking, which is what has been happening to date. And also some of the site testing has already begun. So during February vacation, for example, they were testing some of the site for the variety of things that you would test for when you're doing an expansion or new construction that they would need to understand the layout of, et cetera. So a lot more to come there. That committee's work will not slow down in the summer like other committees are able to. And the intention is by the fall that there would be a preferred design that we would start to work off of and solicit community feedback on in a scenario there that would ultimately be the framework for what goes to a special town meeting next spring. Again, continues to be on track for a special town meeting in April with a vote in conjunction with the local election in May of 2025. A lot can change between now and then, but that's continues to be where we're at. Questions, comments? I will also highlight we have to study 12 different scenarios, some of which are feasible, some of which are just not feasible. So you'll hear more about that as that process continues. Next item 4 is the FY25 budget and town meeting update. So we took our positions and made a presentation first week of January. And then it's been pretty much crickets since. We obviously have had one meeting since then, but that was really related to the sidewalk and ARPA request. Brian or Mark, I don't want to put you on the spot, and I can run with as much or as little of this as possible, but I think it's helpful for the committee to just kind of understand how you got from our recommendations to what ended up in the warrant, because I think if any one of our committee members just open the warrant and study it, they'd be like, what happened to half of the capital items? So I don't know if anyone wants to, at a high level, and then we can drill down if we need to by a specific item, where everything's at.
So I'll unmute to preface it, and then I'll turn it over to Brian if he wants to do details. But essentially, all of the items that Capital brought forward in your recommendation were moved forward by the select board. But some of them, as Jason said, you're not going to see because they were taken care of either with ARPA money or with donations primarily from St. Mark's School. So they don't need to be appropriated because the funds are already available. So they're not there. There's also a reduction in the road money, partially because some of that was, I believe, ARPA. But there also was an agreement with between advisory and the select board to reduce that number by $200,000 this year. But Brian, I think you can offer a little bit more detail.
Maybe not, maybe. No, there was a lot of last minute sort of going back and forth. The board did want to assign a certain amount of money to ARPA money because it was available. So they assigned $500,000 even to that. And they also wanted to assign certain money to free cash. And, you know, it was a little bit harried at the end. Hopefully you know, the detail that you got in the documents tonight show where it landed. You know, the pilot money also was a little bit last minute, and that's, and even that is still ongoing. So, a little bit last minute. We apologize for it, but I think it ended up okay. And, you know, if anyone has any questions, we'll address them.
Thoughts or comments from anyone?
I had one question. When we use the term lease on here for the hook truck and diesel and the others, is that specifically on lease or is that on bond?
That is lease. That is definitely the lease that we did. Probably it was either 3 or 4 years ago. So
Year for the payment, at least by the description here.
that's correct.
Okay, and is it lease to own or is it just lease to then return?
Lease to own.
Okay, thank you.
Form of financing, but they use lease, right? So I have already mentioned this to Mark and Brian in separate things. I think obviously this is probably the last year of ARPA being you know, a relief valve. My concern continues to be well, I hope that no one's disappointed. I think we've ended up with 3.99% tax rate. You know, I do think we're potentially, at least from a capital perspective, masking what really needs to happen. And so while everything's moving forward, right, you know, I think everyone needs to be prepared, even absent the NERI discussion that will happen next year, absent whatever happens with the library, absent whatever happens with the community center, the other recurring items, it's going to be a sizable jump in terms of impact on each taxpayer next year, just related to capital. And I have to imagine that no town department is going to be reducing FTEs or anything like that. So there's not like a natural relief valve to be able to further fund capital like you have had with ARPA. So I think our work is cut out for us over the next year or two. Even if we didn't have those big decisions ahead of us, when you layer on those big decisions, even though you try to exempt some or all of those projects, obviously the main focus is going to be on affordability, right? So, well, I'm hopeful that there's not a ton of discussion on these capital items on Saturday. You know, I do think we have a tough road ahead of us, and I wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone, you know, as we move forward.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Jason, and say that, you know, this budget is great for this year. But you know, going forward year plus 1 plus 2 is really, really gonna be tough. So you guys are gonna have your work cut out for you.
Okay. I guess my only other thing on the FY25 budget is I think Mark and Brian, once we get beyond town meeting, once we understand exactly what gets approved, I do think either there needs to be a communication or a meeting with the department heads that have capital on here, whether it came through ARPA, free cash, or comes through the appropriation in the bonding, because most things aren't getting appropriated, i.e. most things can be purchased come Monday, Tuesday, right? Some things, just making sure everyone's on the same page, especially given that was, you know, that we're not waiting 3 or 4 months to go out and buy stuff and then find out it's going to cost a little more money. So, unless anyone from capital thinks differently, that we had a different intent, I'd like to make sure that that actually happens, and we're getting the most bang for our buck. The next one is CPC related articles. So as I reviewed the warrant, and you know, Brian had shared a few things along the way with certain wording, came to my attention that there's 2 capital projects that are seeking CPA funding at town meeting, both of which I will fully acknowledge we've heard about in pieces before. One is the irrigation at St. Mark's Golf Course, and the other is a trails related project. I believe both were here in variety of forms, but it didn't go through our normal process. I spoke with the chair of the golf committee, which also happens to be our fifth member who's not here tonight, about that. I think I've casually mentioned something to Mark and or Brian at this point about it as well. We need to find a way to that these are factored in, and I'm disappointed that capital didn't actually have a seat on those. I realized that select board candidly only really deals with the appointments, and a lot of the language there for how that committee operates is statutory. But we have a capital policy in town. And even those elected boards, such as the schools, that in both local and the region, that could really do whatever they want to do, even if it didn't include us, do make an effort to come in front of us, even if they're using their reserve funds or other funds that they have available to them that are outside kind of the select board control. So just more of an FYI. I have keenly some views on them. Probably would have informed them differently. I'm not sure that that's entirely relevant right now, but I do think if capital is open to it, that we really need to force a discussion on this whole process going forward next year. This is, I think, our fourth year in like advising town meeting, second, I think, as a standing, official committee. And I mean this with all due respect to all people, this was the sloppiest year I've ever seen in terms of how it all came together, both CPC and the agenda item that we saw before. So I know advisory and select board put a lot of reliance into what we're doing. And even when I asked the advisory chair if he was aware that capital hadn't weighed in on the CPC projects, that was he said, I thought you guys had, sort of thing. So, and obviously it wasn't part of our presentation that we made either back in January. So I don't know if others have other to say, but I felt an obligation to inform you of kind of at least what I was aware of, especially for any of you going to town meeting and may hear some of this for the first time on Saturday. Questions, comments? Right. So with that, I also did get a request on another town meeting article from Mr. Litt, and I see he's here, and I'm going to welcome him in. And Debbie, if you want to come in too, certainly feel free to raise your hand, and I'll pull you over as well. But they are have been part of an article that does relate to some of the business that Capital does conduct, particularly related to DPW. I think we all know some of the discussions that we've had with Public Works Planning Board about 2 years ago before they kind of went on. And I don't think they've met since that meeting. I could be fact checked on that. So I offered, Mr. Litt was looking for us to join Select Board, Planning Board, and Advisory. I believe the three other boards that have already taken votes to really support this article. I offered, he was looking for kind of a vote, but I offered to kind of put anything in front of all of you to inform whether we take a vote or not and what the nature of that vote would be. I will say that, Tim, when you either make your presentation or any of your comments, really focus on what it means for capital. And obviously anything outside of capital, which, we all have an interest in as taxpayers, probably is moot for any purposes of our vote. But obviously I would like to hear more about how you see this revised Public Works Planning Board, or wherever you're calling them now, how they would interact with us, what the benefits, and how you could see even like a DPW project running through. So with that, I think you wanted screen share access too, so I'll give you that. And the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Give me a second here. So, yeah, I got volunteered along with Sam Stivers and Debbie Demuria to see how we could realize their goal of doing something about the Public Works Planning Board. And so what I thought I'd do this evening is, and I had hoped to do it sooner, is just go through sort of what's happening so you're aware of that. I do want to focus, as Jason suggested, on what it means to you, which I hope is all positive. And we'll see where we go. So sort of the background, and I'll go through some of this quickly. Just stop me if you have a question or something, it doesn't quite seem right. So, DPW has had a big impact on the town. A lot of the stakeholders expected the Public Works Planning Board to take a more active role than it has in the past few years. And it turns out that the Public Works Planning Board was created by this thing called the Special Act of the Legislature, which means the town didn't actually, and still doesn't control, its structure or its charter or anything. It's the act that created DPW out of the old cemetery, highway, and water. And it also made the select board into the tree warden of all things. So special acts are what happens when a town creates a home rule petition and says, please, we need something different. And to change it, you need another home rule petition and an act of the legislature. Home rule petitions have to be authorized by a town meeting, then they go to the select board, then they go to the legislature. The reason that this got onto the select board's agenda is that the Public Works Planning Board had an unclear mission and various people have different points of view on it. If you look at, initially it was intended to advise the select board on planning, managing, and financing of the town. It's sort of implicit that it wasn't the advisory committee replacement, but that it was limited to Public Works. And it wasn't intended to be a duplicate of advisory in any sense that way. It was, as best I can reconstruct it, intended to represent town meeting in implementing the vote to create a DPW. And there are a couple of reasons for that. So for the past bit, as Jason hinted, it's been pressured by a lot of stakeholders to be more proactive, to initiate guidance on priorities and long-term planning and to respond to public concerns, but hasn't met in a long time, a lot of dissatisfaction. And the select board will agree that it has not been a good tree warden for a lot of reasons. So they had a goal that they established in their planning meeting, I think it was last July, to quote, abolish the Public Works Planning Board, which, as I mentioned, requires a town meeting vote and then further action. And because they wanted to do that, I decided, suggested that we should also bundle it with reforming the tree warden. I won't go into the details of that, but they're bundled because it's one thing for the legislature to do, and you sort of don't want to go asking for things more often than you have to. So the idea is to replace the old Public Works Planning Board by a standing committee that is designed, we hope, to meet stakeholder expectations. The planning board, the select board, and the DPW superintendent, all support a replacement. And the nice thing about doing it this way is that in the future, town meetings can restructure it, evolve the charge. You don't need state action. So it can be more responsive to needs. So it's been going around for a bit, and what you'll see is that there are 2 articles in the town meeting warrant on this. And they're separated because they're functionally a bit different and also because they have different timelines. The first article, Article 33, is what kicks off the home rule petition process to replace the 1991 thing that created the DPW and current situation. And Article 34, and that one becomes effective for the selectmen to act the day after town meeting. It doesn't have to go through the Attorney General review that bylaws and stuff have to. 34 is the standing committee to establish a replacement committee. That's very similar to what we went through creating the CIPC. And that article, because it's a bylaw, goes through the Attorney General review and has its own little timeline. So 33, it initiates the amendment of the special act. It reestablishes the tree warden. The many members of the select board are thrilled about that. It dissolves the Public Works Planning Board as a state entity, and it does rename the Board of Selectmen, just because I was in there. And it then authorizes the select board to prepare and submit a home rule petition to the legislature, and that's the next step. That's already been drafted and is in legal review as we speak. And then it leaves the replacement committee to the other article, which is 34. So 34, as soon as the Public Works Planning Board is resolved and the order of these two is indeterminate, then the Public Works Advisory Committee, the standing committee, springs into life. And it replaces the old Public Works Planning Board, the Solid Waste Disposal Committee that I don't think has been populated in years, and the Green Technologies Committee that was folded into the Public Works Planning Board a few years ago. And the idea is, and you'll see capital appears right on these slides. I didn't put it there just for this meeting. It works with advisory capital planning and some of the big users of DPW services like trails and recreation as necessary. It's a 5-member committee, and there's a preference that 3 of them have some experience with the kinds of stuff that DPW does. So that might be, ex-employees, it might be a landscape architect, it might be a civil engineer. We'll see. That's left a little bit open. And then it has both the DPW superintendent and the town planner ex officio, so that they know what's going on and they can contribute. It's appointed by the select board, and it's an advisory committee. It's not a management committee of any sort. It advises both the select board and the DPW superintendent. And where it starts to get interesting for you folks is it's intended to assist with establishing priorities and long-term planning for significant public works projects. And sort of the hope here is that means that by the time things find their way to you, a lot of the work that you've been ending up having to do in terms of sorting out the priorities within the DPW universe, and trying to do some of the planning for that, comes to you as something that's coherent and helpful and a bit less work for you. You can then fit that into the overall other capital needs for the town. It also has the charge to evaluate or develop options for projects that I tactfully try and put it, significantly deviate from their plans and scope, expense, or schedule. We can think of some of those that have happened in the recent past where that attention wasn't paid. And it also can help in terms of looking at and figuring out if it's even desirable to look at external funding like grants funding for public works projects, and also to take on some of the communications issues to and from the public about projects. One of the things that DPW has been criticized for in the past is not communicating enough with the public about what's going on, when's my road going to be paved, why did these trees disappear, and those sorts of things. So it can actually offload some of the project notices and hearings that currently are done by the select board and others, again, to try and funnel things in a more coherent, more complete form than the past. It doesn't manage or direct anybody. That includes the superintendent of public works, employees, or projects, and it's intended to be a big picture in the public works environment, not as big as yours. So that's sort of the quick view on that. And then to help you visualize that, give me a second to just share a different screen here. Let's see, where are we hiding? I can find the share screen button here.
So we can see your timeline.
Ah, great.
Is that what you want us to see?
That's what I thought you'd want to see.
All right.
Thanks for letting me know. I'm not a Zoom master. Just so you understand, for Article 33, it basically goes town meeting. It goes to the select board as soon as town meeting is over, and then it gets sent off to our representatives to get a bill introduced in both the House and the Senate in the general court. In theory, there could be some negotiation that goes on, but that's constrained by the way the language was put together. And then eventually the governor signs it and life is good. The general court could take anywhere between 2 months, according to our town council, to about 2 years if you actually look at the timeline that the legislature puts out. Town council, Jay has a lot of experience with this from other towns. He thinks the nature of this is such that it will go through quite quickly. So we don't know. And then for 34, it's the process that you're pretty familiar with in terms of, it goes through town meeting, gets reviewed by the attorney general, and then the committee forms. And it forms when the later of these two things happens. If it's the 2-year sort of thing, then the committee is going to be, long after. And if it's the 2-month sort of thing, then the attorney general is going to come later. We don't know how it's going to work, but either way, that's kind of the how it springs into life bit. There, is a frequently asked questions document that I sent. I don't want to go through those this evening, but you're welcome to wander your way through. And that was sort of what I had for you in the, quick sort of high level picture. I'll be happy to talk about questions, and anyone who's been aware of this thing will tell you that I can go into more detail than you ever want to hear. So don't be shy.
So I'll open it up to questions, and Tim, I'll have you take your screen down.
Sure.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. I guess the question I would have, just taking it and spinning it the other way, why would we not be in favor of this? If you could maybe take it from that angle. But why would we not support this? Like, is there any reason? Is there any downside?
Well, I tried really hard to do it in such a way that there wouldn't be a downside for anyone.
Exactly.
The-
Yeah, your arguments are compelling. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the other
The
side of the
only
coin.
concern would be, if people went territorial and started saying, well, this sort of sounds like it might be, stepping on Capitol's toes in terms of, some of the planning and such. I will say that I had those sorts of concerns when I put the Municipal Technology Committee together. And what I did about that was pretty much every time anyone joins that committee, I have an introductory, talk that goes through and says, here are the boundaries, here's what's supposed to be happening. And I don't think anyone has felt stepped on in that case. So I hope that that will be the case here. And I expect that the select board will, pick people who will work well with others.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Other questions? Tim, one question for you from me is this going to create more work for Bill or whoever our DPW superintendent is in the future beyond Bill's tenure with us, in terms of, like, do you anticipate a situation where that person is having to come to the same meeting twice, i.e. once to the new Public Works Board and then another time to Capital? Or do you feel like they're going to use this time, right, like with the newly formed Public Works Board, to really flesh out what they're bringing forward, such that their time with Capital should actually be less?
So my hope and the plan is the latter, that your time will be less. I talked with Bill Cundiff about this, a few days after I got volunteered to work on it. And he was very excited about this. He said he has experience working in other towns with similar kinds of entities. And he says that without prompting, he said that it had been very valuable to him and very helpful. So hopefully we'll repeat that experience and not create a bad one.
Okay.
And just in terms of, why did I want to, talk to you folks? I mean, because there is some potential overlap and because I think it can be of some help. And the reason for asking for support is, you know, I want people to understand that hopefully you're convinced that this is a good thing for you as well as for the town.
Other questions or comments? All right, then I will move that from a CIPC perspective, we are supportive of these two articles. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. Thanks,
Well,
Tim.
thank you very much for your time and for your support. I do appreciate it. And if
Anytime.
anything comes up, don't be shy.
All right, sounds
Have a good
good.
night. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks.
coming.
Thank you.
All right, back to our agenda, public comment. Seeing none. Other business. Anyone have any?
I'm not sure this is other business, but it looks like I'm probably throwing my hat in to run against Andrew on the select board. So in the event that that does happen, this committee might be searching for another member, which I thought would be worth mentioning ahead of time, as opposed to after the fact. So I just thought I'd let y'all know.
Okay.
Good luck.
There are, yeah, thanks for letting us know. There are no restrictions in who can serve on our committee. It's really what other committees you can serve on. So just keep that in mind regardless of that. And obviously it's gonna take some time, assuming our article at town meeting gets passed, right? To go from 7 to 5. We're still gonna have a quorum. Like that passes on Saturday. It's not until the Attorney General signs off on the town meeting as a whole that would become effective, which history tells us that's this fall. So we will still need a quorum of 4 for any meeting moving forward. All right, so I'm seeing no other business, then I will make a motion to adjourn. Is there a
Second.
second? Roll call vote. Joe,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and I am I as well. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. You
Thanks.
too.
Have a good one.